Hello YouTube, this is CN Maritime History here back with another video, and today I will be talking about the USS Laffey. Laffey's keel was laid down on the 20th of June 1943 by Bath Iron Works Corporation in Bath, Maine. Launched on November the 21st, sponsored by Ms. Beatrice F. Laffey, daughter of Seaman Bartlett Laffey, and commissioned on February the 8th, 1944, with Commander Frederick Beckton in command. Upon completion of underway training, Laffey visited Washington Navy Yard for one day and departed on February 20, 1944, and arriving in Bermuda on March 4th. She served as the school ship, then headed for New York City to join the screen of a convoy escort bound for England on the 14th of May. Refueling at Greenock, Scotland, the ship continued on to Plymouth, England, arriving on the 27th of May. Laffey immediately prepared for the invasion of France. On June the 3rd, she headed for the Normandy beaches, escorting tugs, landing craft, and two Dutch gunboats. The group arrived in the assault area off Utah Beach, France, at dawn on D-Day, June 6, 1944. On June 6th and 7th, Laffey screened the seaward, and on June 8th and 9th, she successfully bombarded gun emplacements on the shore. Leaving the screen temporarily, Laffey raced up Plymouth to replenish and returned to the coast of Normandy the next day. On June 12th, pursuing enemy E-boats that had torpedoed the destroyer Nelson, Laffey broke up their tight formation, preventing further attacks. Screening duties completed, Laffey returned to England, arriving at Portsmouth on the 22nd of June, where she tied up alongside the battleship Nevada. On June 25th, she got underway with the battleship to join Bombardment Group 2, shelling the formidable defenses at Cherbourg Octeville. Upon reaching the bombardment area, the group was taken under fire by shore batteries. Destroyers Barton and O'Brien were hit. Laffey was hit above the waterline by a ricocheting shell, but it failed to explode and did little damage. Late that day, the bombardment group retired and headed for Northern Ireland, arriving at Belfast on July 1st, 1944. She sailed with Destroyer Division 119, 3 days later for home, arriving at Boston on July 9th. After a month of overhaul, the destroyer got underway to test her newly installed electronic equipment. 2 weeks later, Laffey set course for Norfolk, arriving on August 25th. So, actually, this picture is of the Laffey at Patriots Point, which I will explain later. There were two Laffeys. DD-459 sunk in, I believe, sometime in 1943. And the original Laffey was hit by several torpedoes, several bombs, and she just kind of sank to the bottom. Actually, a torpedo hit right around where the propeller section is, just after the last gun on the deck, as you can see here. And the original Laffey's the one on the left. And it blew the whole rear end of the ship, the fantail, off the ship. That's when, and then the center magazine exploded, and the whole ship just went down from there. The second Laffey, DD-724, this one, where my mouse is, I don't know why it says April 1945. I guess it means it was decommissioned then. I don't think it was, but the Laffey, I have been on Laffey, like I have said. I believe I have said that. She's a very, very nice ship. The one place I did not get to go when we were on the Laffey is the forward section here, with the bow with the gigantic guns. We did get to go in the rear section, though, and this turret does have a particular history. There is actually a picture in this, slideshow that I have here of this turret during a particular event in the Laffey's history. We went up on the bridge of the Laffey, which is located in this centralized area. It is it's a very nice ship. Okay. The next day, USS Laffey, DD-724, departed for Hawaii via the Panama Canal in San Diego, California, arriving at Pearl Harbor in September. On the 23rd of October, after extensive training, Laffey departed for the war zone via Eniwetok, mooring at Ulithi on November the 5th. Same day, she joined the screen of Task Force 38, then conducting airstrikes against enemy shipping, aircraft, and airfields in the Philippines. On November the 11th, she spotted a parachute, left the screen, and rescued a badly wounded Japanese pilot who was transferred to the aircraft carrier Enterprise during refueling operations the next day. And yes, this will be the famous USS Enterprise nuclear aircraft carrier. Laffey returned to Ulithi on November the 22nd, and on November the 27th, set course for Leyte Gulf of ships of Destroyer Squadron 60, or as its codename was, Desron 60. Operating with the 7th Fleet, Laffey screened the big ships against submarine and air attacks, covered the landings at Ormoc Bay on December the 7th, silenced the shore battery, or in other terms, blew it up, and shelled enemy troop concentrations. After the beachhead on Mindoro had been established on the 12th of December, Laffey escorted empty landing craft back to Leyte, arriving at San Pedro Bay on December the 17th. 10 days later, Laffey joined Task Group 77.3 for patrol duty off Mindoro. After returning briefly to San Pedro Bay, she rejoined the 7th Fleet, and during the month of January 1945, screened amphibious ships landing troops in the Lingayen Gulf area of Luzon. Retiring to the Caroline Islands, Laffey arrived at Ulithi on January 27th. In February, she supported Task Force 58, conducting diversionary airstrikes on Tokyo and direct air support of Marines fighting on Iwo Jima. Late in February, Laffey carried vital intelligence information to Fleet Admiral Chester Nimitz at Guam, arriving on March the 1st. The next day, Laffey arrived at Ulithi for extensive training of battleships of Task Force 54. On March the 21st, she sorted with the task force for the invasion of Okinawa. Laffey helped capture Karama-Redo, bombarded shore establishments, harassed the enemy with fire at night, and screened heavy units. This part is a very deadly part in Laffey's history. For example, here's that turret I was telling you guys about. It got pretty much destroyed along with the rest of the ship. On April the 15th, 1945, Laffey was assigned, by the way, this is not a underestimated or overestimated statement here in the 79 minutes. That is what it is actually called. I have read the book given to me from Patriots Point when we went there. That is what it is called. Like I said, on April 15th, 1945, Laffey was assigned to Radar Picket Station 1 about 30 miles north of Okinawa and joined in repulsing an air attack which downed 13 enemy aircraft that day. The next day, on April the 16th, the Japanese launched another air attack with some 50 planes. At 8:30, an Aichi D-3A Val dive bomber, which, if you remember, was the same type of plane that blew up the William D. Porter, appeared near the Laffey for reconnaissance. When the D-3A was fired upon, it jettisoned its bomb and left. Soon after, 4 D-3As broke formation and made a dive at the Laffey. 2 of the D-3As were destroyed by 20mm guns, the other 2 low-angle attacks crashed into the sea. Immediately afterward, one of Laffey's gunners destroyed a Yokosuka D-4Y, making a strafing approach on the port beam. 10 seconds later, Laffey's main gun battery hit a second D-4Y on a bombing approach to the starboard beam. The D-4Y's bomb detonated in the water, wounding the starboard gunners with shrapnel. The flames were quickly extinguished by the damage control team. At 8:42, Laffey destroyed another D-3A approaching the port side. While the bomber did not completely impact the ship, it made a glancing blow against the deck before crashing into the sea, also spewing some lethal aviation fuel from its damaged engine. 3 minutes later, another D-3A approaching from port crashed into one of the 40mm mounts of the ship, killing 3 men, destroying 20mm guns and 2 40mm guns, and setting the magazine afire. Immediately afterward, another D-3A made a strafing approach from the stern, impacted the aft 5-inch .38 caliber gun mount, and disintegrated as its bomb detonated the powder magazine, destroying the gun turret and causing a major fire. Another D-3A making a similar approach from astern also impacted the burning gun mount after being set afire by Laffey's gunners. About the same time, another D-3A on a bombing run approaching from astern dropped its bomb, jamming Laffey's rudder 26 degrees to port and killing several men. Another D-3A and another D-4Y approached from port and hit Laffey. Meanwhile, 4 FM-2 Wildcats took off from the escort carrier Shamrock Bay, attempting to intercept the kamikazes attacking Laffey. One of the Wildcat pilots, Carl Riemann, made a dive into the kamikaze formation and targeted D-3A. His wingman took out that dive bomber while Riemann lined up behind another D-3A, opened fire, and destroyed the enemy aircraft. 10 seconds later, he pursued a Nakajima B-5N torpedo plane, fired, and killed the Japanese pilot. Only 5 seconds after that, he lined up behind another plane and expended the last of all his ammunition. As he returned to his carrier, he made diving passes at kamikazes, forcing some of them to break off their attacks. The other 3 Wildcats destroyed a few aircraft and then interfered with the enemy's attack runs after they exhausted their ammunition, until forced to return to Shamrock Bay when their fuel ran too low to stay. Later on, a group of 12 American F-4U Corsair fighters of the United States Marine Corps intercepted the kamikazes. Their actions were of significant help for the Laffey. Another D-3A approached to disable Laffey from port. A Corsair pursued the kamikaze and destroyed it after forcing it to overshoot the ship. The Corsair lined up behind a Ki-43 Oscar, making a strafing approach on Laffey from starboard. One of Laffey's gunners hit the Oscar, causing it to crash into the ship's mast and fall into the water. The pursuing Corsair also crashed into the ship's radar antenna and fell into the water, but the pilot was later rescued by LCS-51. Another D-3A came from the stern and dropped a bomb, detonating off the port side. The D-3A was later destroyed by a Corsair. The Corsair quickly lined up behind another D-3A and fired, but the bomb from the second D-3A hit and destroyed one of Laffey's 40mm gun mounts, killing all its gunners. The Corsair lined up behind two Oscars approaching from the bow, took out one, and was shot down by the other. The surviving Oscar was then shot down by Laffey's gunners. Laffey's main battery fired upon a D-3A approaching from starboard, hitting the plane directly on the nose. The last attacker, the D-4Y, was shot down by a Corsair. Laffey survived despite being badly damaged by 4 bombs, 6 kamikaze crashes, and strafing fire that killed 32 and wounded 71. Assistant Communications Officer Lieutenant Frank Manson asked Captain Beckton if he thought they'd have to abandon ship, to which he snapped, "No, I'll never abandon ship as long as a single gun will fire." Beckton did not hear one nearby lookout softly say it, and if I can find one man to fire it. The attack upon the Laffey on April 16, 1945 was the most unrelenting kamikaze attack of World War II. Next part. This video might be a little bit longer than I thought. The kamikaze attack lasted a while. Laffey was then taken under tow and anchored off Okinawa on April the 17th. Temporary repairs were rushed, and the destroyer sailed for Saipan, arriving on April the 27th. Then she got underway for Hawaii, and she went to Hawaii in Etobicoke and for repairs and fuel, and then she went to Washington on Tacoma, Washington, May the 24th. She entered dry dock, and then after 2 months after that, on October the 5th, she sailed for Pearl Harbor, arriving on October the 11th. Laffey operated in Hawaiian waters until May the 21st, 1946, when she participated in Operation Crossroads, which, in case you don't know, is the atomic bomb test at Bikini Atoll, actively engaged in collecting scientific data. Radioactive decontamination of Laffey required the sandblasting and painting of all underwater surfaces and acid washing and partial replacement of saltwater piping and evaporators. Upon completion of the decontamination, she sailed for the West Coast via Pearl Harbor, arriving in San Diego on August 22nd for operations along the West Coast. In 1947, Laffey made a cruise to Guam and Kwajalein and returned to Pearl Harbor on March 11th. She operated in Hawaiian waters until departing for Australia on May 1st. Laffey returned to San Diego on June 17th and was decommissioned on June 30th, 1947, and entered the Pacific Reserve Fleet. Laffey was recommissioned on 26th of January 1951, with Commander Charles Holovac in command. After her new shakedown cruise out of San Diego, she went to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, for refresher training. In January 1952, she sailed for Korea, arriving in March. Laffey operated with Task Force 77, screening carriers Antietam and Valley Forge. In May, with Captain Henry J. Conger in command, Laffey took part in the blockade of Wonsan in Korea. Although frequently subjected to hostile fire in Wonsan Harbor while embarked in his flagship USS Laffey, Captain Conger conducted a series of daring counter-battery duels with the enemy and was greatly instrumental in the success achieved by his ship. By his inspiring leadership, sound judgment, and zealous devotion to duty throughout, Captain Conger contributed materially to the success of the naval blockade of the east coast of Korea and upheld the highest traditions of the United States Naval Service. This is a letter from Dan A. Kimball, Secretary of the Navy. After a brief refit at Yokosuka on May 30th, Laffey returned to Korea, where she rejoined Task Force 77. On June 22nd, she sailed for the East Coast, transiting the Suez Canal and arriving at Norfolk on August 19th. Laffey operated in the Caribbean with a 100-killer group until February 1954, departing on a world cruise which included the tour off Korea until June 29th. Laffey departed the Far East bound for the East Coast via the Suez Canal, arriving at Norfolk on August 25th. Operating out of Norfolk, she participated in fleet exercises and plane guard duties, and on October 7th rescued 4 passengers from Able, a schooner that had sunk in a storm off the Virginia Capes. During the first part of 1955, Laffey participated in extensive anti-submarine exercises, visiting Halifax, Nova Scotia, New York City, and Miami, as well as ports in the Caribbean. In 1958, she operated with ASW carriers in Floridian and Caribbean waters. And yes, I realize all these pictures are for a Patriots Point, but there's not a lot of Laffey World War II pictures that I could find on the web. On November the 7th, 1956, Laffey departed Norfolk and headed for the Mediterranean at the height of the Suez Crisis. On arrival, she joined the Sixth Fleet, which was patrolling the Israeli-Egyptian border. When international tensions eased, Laffey returned on February 20th, 1957, and resumed operations on the Atlantic coast. She departed on September the 3rd for NATO operations off Scotland. She then headed for the Mediterranean and rejoined the Sixth Fleet. Laffey returned on December 22nd. In June 1958, she made a cruise to the Caribbean for a major exercise. Returning again the next month, Laffey resumed regular operations until August 7, 1959, when she deployed with Desrod 32 for the Mediterranean. Laffey transited the Suez Canal on December the 14th, stopped at Massawa, Eritrea, and continued on to the Aramco loading port of Ras Tanur, Saudi Arabia, where she spent Christmas. Laffey operated in the Persian Gulf until January 1960, when she transited the Suez Canal again and headed for home. Arriving on February 28th, Laffey then operated out of her home port and made a Caribbean cruise. In mid-August, she participated in a large NATO exercise. In October, she visited Antwerp, Belgium, returning again on October 20th, but headed back to the Mediterranean in January 1961. While there, she assisted the MV Dara, which is a British freighter in distress. Laffey sailed for home in mid-August and arrived again on August 28th. Laffey set out in September on a vigorous training program designed to blend the crew into an effective fighting team and continued this training until February 1963, when she assumed the duties of service ship for the test and evaluation detachment. Here we are at Patriots Point. These are pictures I took when we were there. So we have the Laffey's engine room, which I had to suspend my phone over the railing to get this picture. And then there's the USS Laffey. I can't remember exactly if this is the Laffey or the Yorktown. I believe it was the Laffey. But this box with all these dials and switches along the far wall, there's stuff that what you can't see in the picture is there's like a big wall over here that also has all these dials and knobs. This box is a computer. That's like all their tactical equipment, all their radar, sonar, all that's hooked up through there. She's currently in a museum at Patriots Point in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, which is literally right across the river from Charleston, alongside two other U.S. National Historic Landmarks, aircraft carrier Yorktown and submarine Flamingore, which I've also been on. In October 2008, it was discovered that over 100 leaks had sprung up in her hull. So she went to the Navy Yard and became repaired. Then she came back to Patriots Point, and she's pretty much been there ever since. Actually, a new berth was needed for her because she was moved to a new place right at the entrance to the museum. But not much else has happened to her since. She's had a very bright career, very long career, and this has been a very long video. But I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. I hope I did not make you bored or anything, but I had to get all the details in there because there are a lot of details in Laffey's life. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Please remember to like and subscribe, and have a good day.